I have the mic, and after 7 years, here's my rebuttal. Okay, it started last week with the hair thing. It is true. I like his hair long, and I hate when he cuts it. Okay, he says he has no willpower, and that's actually not true. He has a ton of willpower. Most men, you say the word die when they drop 50 pounds, but not him. It's really hard for him, and he has more willpower than me. He says that he's lazy, and that's not true. He just actually works really effectively, and it really angers me and upsets me that he can be more productive, but whatever. And he does so much around here that you guys don't see, and he doesn't mention it. And also, he says he's not an athlete, but he really, he's a really great weightlifter, and he has run marathon, he's run half marathon, he's done triathlon. He was a record holder provincially in swimming. He could kick all of our butts in the pool. And anyways, we're going to let him go on with all of his self-deprecating humor, but I can tell you the truth, none of it's right. But we're in Ruth today when we have this ongoing discussion about me speaking, and then we looked on the schedule and it was going to be Ruth. It was true. I was like, okay, that could be the Lord telling me to speak. Because the book about Ruth, it is such a great book. If you've not read Ruth, you should read Ruth. If you don't know where to start the Bible, if you're like, oh, I just don't even know the Bible, it's overwhelming, it's a really big book, start in Ruth. It is a short little book, only 4 chapters. It's got love and romance, and it's a really good, and Jesus. We're going to get there. But it's a really great book, and but it is a feminine book. I found on all the research I did, it's actually written in feminine tense in the language it was written. I don't know what language it was written, but so it's a woman's book. It's good that there's a woman talking about it. Okay, so the version that we're going to be in this morning, if anybody's done a Bible study with me, you know I love the Message, and you can make fun of me all you want. But this is why we're in the Message this morning. Here's the King James Version of how Ruth starts. Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was famine in the land. That's okay. The NIV goes, in the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. Here's a lesser known version, the ABSD, the Arabic Bible. Okay, we're not in that one today. The Message, once upon a time, it was back in the days when the judges led Israel, there was a famine in the land. All good books start once upon a time. Like, I love it. So here we're going to be in the Message. So there's a famine back in the day. I'm going to talk really fast, I'm sorry. There was a famine in the land. A man from Bethlehem left Judah. A man from Bethlehem in Judah left home to live in the country of Moab. He and his wife had 2 sons. So interesting, Bethlehem means house of bread. And there was famine in the house of bread. It's very interesting, isn't it? I think we're going to talk about that on Wednesday, but I don't want to go down that rabbit trail. But so they're famine, they go to Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi. His sons, we don't need to get emotionally attached to them. They all went into the country of Moab and settled there. Spoiler alert. Elimelech died, and Naomi was left, she and her 2 sons. The sons took Moabite wives. The names of the first was Orpah, and the second Ruth. Sidebar, Oprah was actually named after Orpah, but her mom spelt it wrong. Did you see that episode? I saw that episode. It's true. They lived there in Moab for the next 10 years, but then the 2 brothers died. Now the woman was left with her young man and her husbands. No, now the woman was left without her young man or her husband. So I found this was really interesting, and in all the sermons I read and podcasts and stuff I listened to, nobody really focused on the 10 years. Those 2 girls were married, or whatever you want to call it. They were married for 10 years, and they didn't have children. Back in the day, they were not putting motherhood on hold for their career, and they were not going back to college. For 10 years, they were married, and they had no kids. I think it's worth noting that they were barren. And on this Mother's Day, if you are one of the ladies that are waiting for a child, I've been there. I remember crying one time on a Mother's Day when we were still waiting for my peanut. And this can be a tough day, but I want you to know that this book is full of women that did not have children or that were waiting for children. And if you're looking for that hope, get in there. God has them in there, I think, because he wants to say to you, I see you and I hear you, baby girl, and I have hope for you. And so there we have these 2 barren women. That's the journey. So Naomi says, I'm done with Moab. Nothing good has come here. Let's go back home. Let's go to Bethlehem. So Naomi decides to return to Bethlehem. A short while on the road, Naomi told her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go back, go home and live with your mothers, and may God treat you as graciously as you treated your deceased husband and me. May God give each of you a new home and a new husband." She kissed them and they cried openly. And there's a whole bunch of back and forth going on where Naomi literally is saying, "No, really, girls, go. I've got nothing for you. Are you going to wait till I give birth and you marry that son in me?" Like, she's like, "No, please, really, enough already." And Orpah, she caves to the Jewish nagging. She can't take it anymore. Well, we don't know why, but she goes back. She has the choice, and she goes back. Ruth says, "No, Mom, I'm staying with you." And we see this speech that you often see at weddings, but it was a daughter-in-law to her mother-in-law. "Where you go, I go, and where you live, I live. Your people are my people, your God is my God. Where you die, I die, and that's where I'll be buried. So help me God, not even death itself is going to come between us." So the 2 of them head back on the road together to Bethlehem. When they arrive in Bethlehem, the whole town was buzzing. Is this really Naomi after all this time? Okay, when I read a book, it becomes a movie in my head. I don't know if anybody's like that. Like, it's not just that you hear the story audibly. It's like I see the scenes, I see the characters, I have background music, I see people. Yeah, it takes you a lot longer to read a book, but it's a really good book like that. This scene, in my mind, this is like, did you ever see Steel Magnolias? And it's a lot set in the hairdressing salon. And Dolly Parton is in there. She's one of the hairdressers, and they just kind of hang out like you do in a girl's salon. You just talk about life. So in this scene, this is where I am. She's in a beauty salon. And the girls are saying, "Naomi," like, "Oh my gosh, girls!" Like the town is buzzing. It would be like that in a girl's salon, right? That's why it's feminine. But, "Oh my gosh, it's so great to see you. How have you been?" And Naomi goes, "Oh, don't even, girls. I am went with, oh my gosh, you just don't even know what I've been through. Was it not enough that I lost my husband, I had to lose my 2 men? I'm going between Jewish and Southern, I don't know." They're talking, she's like, "Do not even call me Naomi anymore, call me Mara because I'm bitter. Like, I just don't even." Then we cut to, that scene's over, Ruth. Ruth has to pay for all the salon visits that Naomi's doing, so she goes to work. And the only way that Ruth would have to provide, the Lord had set up earlier in the law, we read in Leviticus at the very beginning, when you harvest your land, don't harvest right up to the edges of your field or gather the gleanings from the harvest. Don't strip your vineyards bare or go back and pick up the fallen grapes. Leave them for the poor and the foreigner. I am God, your God. So Ruth has, all that she has available to her is to glean. And that just means the landowner had the right to go through his field, pick up with his workers, whatever he had. What was left behind was for the poor and the foreigners. And so Ruth is out gleaning. And the landowner, his name is Boaz. In comes a new character, Boaz. And Boaz is looking out over his big field, and he says to his foreman, "Hey, who's that?" Like, that's what I picture it. Who's that? And it could have been just because, who's that in my field? She was a foreigner. And the foreman goes, "That's the foreigner that came with Naomi. You know how we're all talking about Naomi that came back with this foreigner daughter-in-law? That's her." Boaz, and he says, she has been working from sun up to sundown. Boaz goes to her and says, "Ruth, listen, my daughter, from now on, don't go to any other field to glean. Stay right here in this one. And stay close to my young women. Watch where they are harvesting and follow them. And don't worry about a thing. I've given orders to my servants not to harass you. When you get thirsty, feel free to go and drink from the water buckets that the servants have filled." So Ruth kind of goes, "Oh, like, why would you treat me so kindly?" Boaz answers her, "I've heard all about you. Heard about the way you treated your mother-in-law after the death of her husband, and how you left your father and your mother in the land of your birth and have come to live among a bunch of total strangers. Sound familiar, Sabrina?" I don't know if she's here, maybe not, but anyways, that's what she is. "God reward you well for what you have done, and with a generous bonus aside from God, to whom you come seeking protection." So Boaz says, Ruth, I have heard from my foreman what a great worker you are. You've been working from sundown, and I have heard what a great daughter-in-law you are. And here we're going to stop for a little moment in the story, because we are on Mother's Day, and all of you came to hear about Proverbs and what a great woman mothers are. And yes, we have wonderful mothers. I have the best mother in the world. My daughters have the best mother in the world. I know you all have the best mothers in the world, but I have the coffee cup, so I know. But here we are in talking about being a really good daughter-in-law. That's less exciting. In our world, especially, we joke about the in-laws. It's the safe place to kind of go, that's okay for us not to have love and respect for the in-laws. It's almost expected. And I know Dave's been up here and he jokes about his in-laws all the time. But he has lived with them for 16 years. He has paid the price, people. It's been there. You've complained about your mother-in-law coming for a long weekend, and shut up. 16 years. And all of a sudden, we have actually worked our butts off. It doesn't come easy to have a relationship with in-laws. We worked really hard and we had a place where we can joke about it. Didn't start off easy. It wasn't great. There we are. And I think it's important that we just acknowledge it's here, that we have to love our in-laws. Like we love, in the Bible, it's mentioned, I looked up a number of verses, like 10,000 million times, it's mentioned to honor your mother and father. And I don't believe every time that was said, even by Jesus or in the Old Testament, when Moses brought it down, it wasn't to a Sunday school class. It was to a bunch of grown-ups. Honor your mother and father. And we could go on about that. I think we have to honor our mother and father-in-law as well. We have to honor them as children. We have to honor them as adults. And we have a lot of great in-law relationships here. I was the best daughter-in-law in the world. I can say that because my in-laws are dead. But I was their favorite. And that also didn't come easy. My mother-in-law were not the same. We were not at all. She actually used recipes and followed them. And, like, what? But I had a great time when she cooked. I took that opportunity. If you don't have a great in-law relationship, I think you haven't asked enough questions. You need to find out what their childhood was like. What were their dreams like? You get to know them as people on a there. That's like you, baby. Oh, this is the best advice I ever got. I'm so glad that I was given twice as much time as the rest of them. The best advice I ever got as a daughter-in-law, I got from my mother. She's the wisest mother I've ever had. And she said, this is only going to hopefully what I'm going to say is going to reach to boys and girls, but this is only going to possibly reach to the ladies. And she gave me this advice on the day I think I gave birth to Jessie. And she said, whatever your mother-in-law says to you, imagine it's coming out of my mouth. And you kind of go, what? But imagine your mother says, why are you feeding your child that? Then imagine your mother-in-law saying, why are you feeding your child that? We hear it differently when it's our mother-in-law. And so I'm saying, if you have any issues, put this filter on. Just undo everything your mother-in-law says. Imagine it's coming from your own mother, and you're going to hear it with love, and it'll be easier to take. My mom has said some things. So it was really easy to listen to my mother-in-law say things out of her voice. So it's all good. It's all good. That is my best advice. But Kate, she was also known for these classes. It's hard to be. I have to be a hot librarian now. Getting on my nerves. Well, that's what my husband calls me. I'm not saying I'm hot when I do this. Okay. She was known. People talked about her being such an amazing daughter-in-law. So we have to be known for being loving people to our in-laws. She was known for being a heck of a good worker, like from sun up to sundown, the foreman said. And we all are called, whatever you're called to. All she had was a daughter-in-law, all she was a gleaner, and she was the best at those. Wherever you are, God has put you wherever you are, and you need to be the best at that. If you're a student, you have to be the best darn student. Like Megan, become a valedictorian, I'll tell you. She's teaching Sunday school. Bless her. If you're an employee, you gotta be the best darn employee. Jen Smith has been at our school as an EA for about 2.5 minutes, and she has guaranteed herself a job because she works her little tiny butt off from sun up to sundown. And I know from admin, I've heard my principal say to other EAs that have been there longer, follow Jen, do what Jen says and say what Jen says. Like, literally, she has not worked here, like, how many months? And she will have a job next year because she's a hard worker. Wherever you have, if you're the boss, be the best darn boss you can be known for being. You're going to speak to, you are representing the creator of the universe. And you need to be the best that you can be at that. Back to the story. So, Boaz is so impressed with Ruth, he invites her for lunch. They have wine and bread together. And when she got up to go back to work, Boaz ordered his servants, let her glean where there is still plenty of grain on the ground and make it easy for her. Better yet, pull some of the good stuff out and leave it for her to glean. Give her special treatment. What? So Ruth goes home, and in this scene, they're in the kitchen and Naomi's cooking supper for them. She's chopping her veggies, and she says, so baby girl, how was work? And Ruth goes, well, you're not going to believe it. The landowner treated me like better than one of his workers. He took me out for lunch. He bought me wine. It was such an amazing day. I'm going to be able to work with him. Like, our life is great. And, oh, that's fabulous, honey bunch. What was his name? And Ruth goes, Boaz. Focus in, the light shines on Naomi. What? Boaz? That's our covenant, that's our kinsman redeemer. The man Ruth is one of our circle of covenant redeemers, a close relative of ours. In chapter 2, it happened that Naomi had a relative by marriage, a man prominent and rich, connected with Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz. So Ruth keeps on working there. She works really hard, sun up and sundown, until Naomi has a plan. She says, take a bath, put on some perfume, get all dolled up, and go down to the threshing floor. But don't let him know you're there until the party's well underway and he's had plenty of food and drink. When you see him slipping off to sleep, watch there as he lies down, and then go there. Lie at his feet and let him know that you're available to him for marriage. Then wait and see what he says, and he'll tell you what to do. So Ruth, being the obedient daughter, does exactly what her mother-in-law says. Now, when you first read that, I think in our 2018 mind, we kind of filter that through as a, get all dolled up, baby girl, go down there, wait till he's drunk, passed out, lie at his feet. Like, take me, I'm yours. But it's not really that. The more I read and commentators said, it was, first of all, landowners would have slept. When harvest was over, all of their inventory, all of their hard work for the whole year is lying in this one place on whatever it is, a barn or whatever. They sleep there to protect it. Servants lie at the feet of the landowners there. There would have been other servants there helping him, and they lie at the feet. She was going down, and Naomi is saying, lie at his feet as the servant I am. Let him get all dolled up, get rid of your mourning clothes, go down there, let him know you're available for marriage. And it goes on, I don't know where I'm saying. So it was more of an act of submission. He wakes up and he says, hello, who are you? Like, I'm your servant Ruth, she said. Spread the corner of your garment over me, since you are a guardian redeemer of your family. So she is saying also, make yourself available, remind him. And that was the thing about laying his clothes over top of you. There was a couple of things I read about the hem. Remember when Jesus came upon the woman that had the blood issue, and she reached up and touched his hem? There was power in the hem. The Jewish culture still is today. I lived in a Jewish neighborhood in Toronto, and they have at the ends of their garment, they have the little tassels. It's the law. And she could have been saying, here, remember the law? The law that God said before us, that the kinsman redeemer, you can marry me. Like, take me, I am yours. It was that kind of a submission. You have the right and to marry me. But we're coming back to that gentle break. Boaz says to her, God bless you, my daughter. What a splendid expression of love. And when you could have your pick of any of the young men around. And now, my dear daughter, don't worry about a thing. I'll do what you could ever want or ask. Everybody in town knows what a courageous woman you are, a real prize. You're right, I am a close relative to you. But there is one even closer than I am. Dum, dum, dum. Like, no! We were just falling in love. They were having wine and bread, and now there's somebody else. Scene 4 opens up. Boaz is at the town gate. In my movie, it's Cary Grant. And he's sitting at the bench. He's gathered together 10 men. That's what the law was done back there. Business was done. He gathered 10 men around. He's sitting on the bench just waiting for this nearer relative than him that comes along. But he comes along and he says, hey, there's 10 men. He knows that business is about to happen. Hey, remember that relative we had, Elimelech, that relative that we have? The piece of property that belonged to our relative is being sold by his widow Naomi, who's just returned from the country of Moab. I thought you ought to know about it. Buy it back if you want. You can make it official in the presence of these sitting right here before the town elders. You have first redeemer rights. If you don't want it, let me know and I'll know where you stand. You're first in line to do this, and I'm next after you. So I think Cary Grant is sitting there just spinning his hat or like, hey, do you want this? Like, really all casual. And he goes, yeah, I'll buy it. And then Cary Grant or Boaz goes, he said, just one more thing, like a little Columbo egg. You realize, don't you, that when you buy the field from Naomi, you also get Ruth, the Moabite, the widow of her dead relative, along with the redeeming responsibility to have children with her to carry on family inheritance. Did I mention that there's this foreigner that comes with, that you have to, by law, have children with her to redeem the rights of Elimelech, to keep the family line going? No, I didn't mention that. And he says, no, like tap out, that's not my thing. But they don't really say why he chooses not to, but he chooses not to marry her. The foreigner thing could have been the thing, but we don't know. And so the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, buy it yourself, and he removes his sandal. That's part of the transaction. I was like, okay, it's done. Here's your receipt. Here's the sandal. And we go. The transaction's done. Boaz then marries Ruth, and they have a child. Like right away they have a child. Remember, she was barren for 10 years. They have a child right away. And so flash to Steel Magnolia's hair salon. Naomi's in there. Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe I'm a grandma. Like, oh, this is fabulous. It says the town woman said, Naomi, blessed be to God. He didn't leave you without any founding care in your life. Maybe this baby grow up to be famous in Israel. And then we read on. The neighborhood women start cooing, calling him Naomi's baby boy. Like Ruth is the mom, but it's Naomi's baby. But his real name was Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of David. And then it goes on and it lists the lineage, the family tree of Perez. And as you can see, and Obed had Jesse, and Jesse had David. Ruth gave birth to King David's grandfather. And when you see this lineage, you can also, you go, have I seen that before? Yes, you have. You saw it in the New Testament when in Matthew, we refer back to this lineage. And you just flash through the Matthew there. You'll see that it's mentioned or not, but it's so tiny, or is it just my old eyes? Anyways, it's in this part that we see that this is David's lineage. So not only is it ending with, it's pointing to, like, Obed was the grandfather of King David, but it also is in the lineage of Jesus. It's a big blue arrow pointing to Jesus. So it ends with, it couldn't have ended even with, they lived happily ever after. It might not have ended as well as that. It's even better than happily ever after. It's pointing to Jesus. We started when it was in the time when the judges ruled, and we ended pointing to kings. Pointing, first of all, directly to King David, the man after Jesus' heart, after God's own heart, the man, but also with the blue arrow to Jesus. We started with famine in the land, and we ended in the harvest festival with food. We started with 3 funerals, and we ended with the wedding. Kind of funny, 3 weddings and a funeral. We started with 2 barren women, and we end with the birth of a grandchild. We started with bitterness and unhappiness, and we ended with joy and celebration. If you're over here at all, anywhere in dark times, if you don't know what's happening, if you don't have a future, if you're in the dark and stormy night, but you want to end up here in happily ever after, all you need is a kinsman redeemer to bridge that gap. And we have the kinsman redeemer. His name is Jesus. And again, as we've seen, as everything we've done in all these series, it points to Jesus. From the very beginning, God had a plan for the kinsman redeemer. He put it into law. There's 4 things he must do. The first thing, he must be near of kin. Leviticus 25 tells us how the nearest relative can redeem land. And in Leviticus 25:48, it says how he can also redeem back a person from slavery. Your kinsman redeemer can redeem your land, it can redeem your person. Jesus is it has to be the nearest relative. Jesus is our near relative. In Hebrews 2, we see since the one who saves and those who are saved have a common origin, Jesus doesn't hesitate to treat them as a family, saying, I'll tell my good friends, my brothers and sisters, all I know about you. I'll join them in worship and praise to you. And again, he puts himself in the same family circle when he says, even I live by placing my trust in God, and yet again, here I am with the children God gave me. The second thing a kinsman redeemer was, he must be free of any calamity to redeem. A slave could not redeem another slave. You had to be free. And Jesus is free. We know he is God who knows no sin. The third thing is he must be willing to redeem. We saw in Ruth, that relative, he was the nearest, he had the money, but he was not willing to do what it took, but Jesus is willing to redeem us. In the voice, I like it in this version, it says, Jesus said, the Father loves me because I am willing to lay down my life, but I will take it up again. My life cannot be taken away by anybody else. I am giving it of my own free will. My authority allows me to give my life and take it again. All has been commanded of my Father. And finally, the kinsman redeemer must pay the price. Redemption was completed when the price was completely paid. That was the whole taking off the shoe. The transaction is done, and Jesus paid the price. In 1 Peter, we read, for you know that it was not with the perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life. It was with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. And so how did Ruth get redeemed? She went to her kinsman redeemer and said, take me on yours. And if you want to be redeemed by your Jesus, by our kinsman redeemer, all you have to do is say, take me on yours. Jesus can take you from slavery to freedom. He can take you from poverty to bring you into his kingdom, and he can take you from being a foreigner outside of family and bring you into right relationship in his family. And all you have to do is ask for it. And so if I was a good singer, I would sing My Redeemer Lives right now. It's going to be fabulous. But since I can't, I'm going to call up the worship team, and they're going to sing a different song. And I'm just going to pray, thank you, God, that you are our Redeemer. Thank you for paying the price and freely dying on the cross for us. And we thank you for all you have done. Through Jesus, I pray. Amen.